Welcome to the City. I'm Anthony Wilson, the Communications Director for the City of San Angelo. And today joining us for our episode is Aaron Vanoy. Aaron is the Planning and Development Services Administrator. Aaron, I appreciate you being with us.
Well, thanks for having me, Anthony.
So we are here to talk about the Development Review Committee. So tell us what the Development Review Committee is and what it does.
Well, the Development Review Committee is a group of city staff that meets weekly to review projects and plans. And what it really does is try to help developers and contractors understand what our ordinances are here locally and how maybe some of the state laws might interfere or complicate their projects. It's really a solutions-based group that wants to help that contractor, that developer, to be able to do something in the city limits of San Angelo.
And so this happens on the front end of the development process, right?
Certainly. We call these pre-development meetings. So we really want you to come in before you break ground, before even you buy that piece of property or lease that building. Come in and visit with this group to look at what might be required to get that building or that land up to code so that you can operate out of it.
And even, I assume, a veteran developer, because there's so many regulations, there's so many codes, ordinances, state statutes, as you mentioned, that it may be confusing for them. They may not be aware of all that they must do in order to develop a piece of property.
That's correct. There could be lots of steps to go through, and what we want to do is lay out those steps, develop that path so that they can get to the completion. That's their main focus, is when can I open? Well, we want to understand if they need to replat, if they need to do some kind of infrastructure improvements with sewer lines, water lines, roadway, what kind of other site development things they need to be worried about with drainage, and then just the general construction of that building, what's going to be required. Codes change, instances changes on the sites, on what they're planning on doing, and so we want to talk about it before they start breaking ground.
Are there some common things that developers may not think about whenever they're approaching a project that you guys help them think about before, as you said, they start to break ground?
Well, certainly the infrastructure needs. A lot of developers assume there's sewer and water available. Well, there's parts of our cities that just don't have those services available, and so they are responsible for running those services to that property. The other thing that's very interesting to me is like entrances off of streets and roadways. Our engineering department does a great job of explaining why you can only have one entrance or two entrances or where it should be based on the speed of vehicles. And a lot of developers don't think about that. They're just worried about, how do I get people to come to this place? Well, there is a method to the madness from the engineering side of how they want to do that safely.
And so I know there are a couple of new developments in town, and people can complain about the ingress and egress. And sometimes you guys make recommendations to them, and the developer says, thank you, but no thank you.
Well, certainly. We definitely make some recommendations out there. The ordinance says one thing, we tell them best practices and what the ordinance says. And so sometimes they just they go against the best practices, and that's okay. I think some of them realize afterwards, wow, we should have done this differently. But they may have some pressure on timelines. But you think about the area that's on the west side of Loop 306 down Sherwood, lots of little businesses popping up in there, and we don't want entrances every 50 foot. We want them further apart because it's a high-speed road. We want those interconnectivity on those lots of land so that they can get in and get around. And it's really about safety and how people move around safely so that they're not injured. How we have people that walk, we have people that are on bicycles, motorcycles, and then large vehicles. How do they all get there? And so that's a big thing.
So you mentioned that the Development Review Committee is made up of city officials from different departments involved in the development process. Who attends these meetings from the city standpoint?
From the city standpoint, we have a great group of folks. We have our planning department, which they talk about land use, what you can do with your land. We have our engineering department that talks about infrastructure, streets, water, sewer. We have our fire marshal's department that talk about fire regulations all the way from where a hydrant has to be located to what type of fire suppression you have to have in the building. We have our building and permits and inspection group that they come and talk about the building itself. And then we may have other group of different people all the way from economic development, small business administration group may come. We may have folks from the chamber. It just kind of depends on if that's something the applicant wants there. We're able to bring them to the table so they can hear everything in one room.
So the developer is looking for the expertises of all these city officials. Are the city officials in turn looking for specific information from the developers so that they can start thinking about how to make those puzzle pieces fit together?
Yeah, certainly with the development review committee is looking for what we call a site plan. What is that site going to look like? Where are you going to put buildings? Where is your parking going to be? All of those types of things, because most of our ordinances deal with measurements, numbers. Where is things distance from other things? And so we look at that site plan to determine that. So maybe it's just preliminary, but then we can say, well, your building really should be moved 20 feet this way, and that's why we want to get them before they've broken ground or started a foundation. All those things matter, and so getting that site plan and looking at it and see what the logistics are of where things are going to happen.
So it sounds like the site plan then is the key. Once you have your site plan, then you know you're ready for a development review committee meeting.
Definitely for a development review committee is to have something in hand, some kind of sketch that's going to show us what that site's going to be, because then we can drill into our answers and give you much more specific answers because we have something to look at.
And in a moment we're going to talk about sort of a pre-development meeting that you guys also have for people who don't yet have a site plan but perhaps have an idea. You mentioned that the group meets weekly. How do people go about requesting a meeting with the Development Review Committee?
Well, we have an online application that they fill out. They go to our website. They go on there. They fill in some criteria that we have. They upload their site plan, and then that is sent to one of our staff members. They call them and they get it scheduled the very next week.
And so you usually have these meetings on Friday. Is there a timeline when you need to request a meeting in order to have it the following Friday?
Well, the week ahead is when you need to schedule it, and we have now shifted those from Friday to Thursday. That was some of the feedback we got back from developers, is that a lot of Fridays they're not around in town, but on Thursdays they could be, and so we moved it to Thursdays to help out our developers to be able to be there. And we talk about be there. They don't always have to be physically in the room. We also do teleconference. So if you're in Austin, Dallas, Houston, somewhere else, and we had one from St. Louis last week, they would call in and we'd still have our city team in the room so everybody could hear the conversation, but we have that capability here.
So what's an example of a project that people may be aware of that went through the DRC process?
Well, some of the smaller ones is like the Firehouse Bed and Brew downtown. They went through that because they're in the downtown location. They didn't build a new structure, but they had DHRC responsibilities. They had some infrastructure stuff that they had to work on.
Now, when you say DHRC, you may have to explain that to viewers.
I should say that that's the Design and Historic Review Commission that oversees some of our downtown area and their buildings and what can be done there. Obviously, the HEB and all of those other buildings that have been out there, the Panda Express, the new Taco Bueno that's going out there, the Nukes and the building that it's associated, all those went through DRC, so we could clearly articulate what needs to be done, especially for those big sites like that are big retail sites, how that's going to impact that traffic flow, how that's going to impact the neighborhoods around there. And so those are some of the big projects that we've seen.
So what's the feedback that you're getting from customers as far as how helpful the DRC process has been in helping them shepherd their project through to completion?
Well, most people are telling us that they are very thankful for the city doing that. We've actually heard even national contractors call in and say, wow, your city has it figured out. And it's because they're actually getting that step-by-step process talked about what needs to be done. So it's been very, very positive. Many people have said, wow, we didn't realize we needed to do this. So they went back to the drawing table before they broke ground, and they were thankful that we talked about that before they started spending money.
And so it results in fewer surprises, which I guess helps to speed up the development process.
Yes, it does. And we were running some numbers, and those that go through a DRC, their review time to permit time is so much less than someone that doesn't do that. And so they're understanding what's required, what papers they need to submit, what drawings, and so they're getting things faster, which in the construction field, time is money, and so the sooner they can get a permit and get somebody in the building, the better off they're going to be.
And does that also translate to them typically passing an inspection in a more timely fashion as well?
It actually does, because they know what they drew is true and accurate, and they already got that pre-approval, and so when they go and build it out there just that way, they know it's going to pass the inspection.
So we see how it helps to benefit developers. Is there any benefit to city staff in having these sort of meetings?
There certainly is, because we can, particularly on our planners and engineering side, really see what the capacity and the needs are going to be in the future. You start taking in some of that blank land out there. Well, how are we going to get sewer lines, water lines, streets? What other land uses are going to be needed to go out there? Is this a good spot for residential, or should it stay commercial or industrial? And so it is very important for the city to know those things, so we can plan how do we structure our city in the future.
Now, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, you also offer a process called a consultation. So explain the difference between a consultation and a development review committee meeting.
The consultation, as I see it, is I have a dream, I have an idea, I want to do something type of meeting. Somebody that may just come in with a concept. Maybe it's somebody that wants to do a food truck, or maybe they want to do a retail store downtown or in a building that's already existing. They can come in and talk to us about their idea, and we can talk about what the rules and regulations are that would apply to that. That really helps folks before they go and sign a lease or buy a piece of property. It really gives them the information they need. I call it kind of a brainstorming session, because we get in there and find solutions of, well, if we did this, we could do this. And so they're fun meetings to see, well, what are people thinking about doing? Is it in our downtown? Is it in one of our other corridors that we see that's very important to the city? Is it out at the airport? Are we going to start building some areas around town? And so those are good meetings.
And so do you ever see people who come in with an idea, and after they go through this process, they realize that may not actually be a workable idea?
We do see that from time to time, and it's either maybe the idea was not fully developed yet, or maybe the location that they really had their heart set on was not the right location, that they needed to find a different location or a different business plan. And that's where we get, some of our other folks, our COSA DC that comes in, sometimes the Small Business Administration comes in, and they can help those applicants find some of those creative solutions to make their dream happen.
And so can you think of a project that began as a consultation that we see on the ground today?
Well, that's a good question. I would say, like the Firehouse Bed and Brew downtown, they came in as a consultation, because what we saw is they were bouncing around from department to department asking questions, but the folks in the department didn't realize they had already talked to somebody else, and so they may have been having a requirement that was contradictory to somebody else. I said, well, hey, let's get them all in the room and talk about the consultation, the idea. Once they started talking about the idea of having upstairs that's actually kind of like a bed and breakfast, and the downstairs having a retail and restaurant component, everybody started, wow, this sounds great. What can we do to help them find some solutions? And
so it sounds like the dynamics are pretty similar between a consultation and a DRC as far as who attends and the sort of discussions that happen.
They are very similar. The consultation difference really is, it's very preliminary. It's I just have an idea, where could I do this in town? Where a DRC is, you've got more of a concrete, here's some plans, what do you guys think kind of material.
And so how often do the consultations occur, and how do people go about requesting one of those sort of meetings?
We do those just like our DRCs. We offer those on Thursdays, and so they get online and they have the option of filling out the consultation form or the DRC form on our website. They fill that out. They have some criteria to fill in. Comes into our office. We have a staff member that calls them out and gets that scheduled for them the very next week.
So if people want more information, either about a consultation or a development review committee meeting, where's the best place for them to go to get that?
The best place to go is on our website. Go to COSATX.us. Go to the Development Services and Planning part. There's a whole section on consultations and development review committee. They can read about it. They can also find our email there or call in to us and ask us about it. And we're always happy to have folks come in and talk about those things.
And as you mentioned, on that same page is where they'll find the online forms to actually request one of these Thursday meetings.
Yes, there's a link on there. They just click the link, it goes and walks them through what to fill out. It comes directly to us, and it's very, very simple.
So as Aaron said, always great advice. If you want more information, go to our website. As he mentioned, we do have a page dedicated strictly to our Planning and Development Services Department. And we hope you'll join us on the next episode of The City.